What happens when you get a bunch of A-list actors in the 90s together, all to perform a Western, but you have as many script rewrites as possible to the point where you're jerking your head around wondering what the hell is happening? Welcome to Tombstone. Hello everyone, my name is Jake from Talk Too Much, and I had the joy of experiencing for the first time Tombstone. Now, this was a Western that I was unfamiliar with, other than the names being attached to this monster. I mean, my lord. When I look at that cast, it blows me away, seeing from Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Michael Biehn, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, the list goes on and on and on, and this was a movie I was extremely excited for. Of course, I mentioned all those names. I'm a huge fan of all their works, but somehow the fact that I never came across Tombstone and watched it out of my way, it was just as much of a shock to me as anyone else. So I sat down, watched this with my grandpa, I even watched it with my wife, and all I have to say is I'm pretty blown away for a 90s Western. Pretty much what the plot of this movie is Wyatt Earp, Kurt Russell, he goes into town and he's pretty much taken over as marshal, trying to get the cowboys under control. We're wiping them all out. There's too obnoxious going around. We need security. We need to protect this town. And starting off with the positives, because again, this is a 33-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go ahead and see it before we continue talking about it. But my positives are going to be the performances are probably some of my favorite performances to date from these actors. Val Kilmer is the best way I can describe it. Is imagine Jack Sparrow, but a Western. That's all you need to know going into this movie, and that's why I enjoyed it so much, was just him alone. He was hilarious. He's just playing as someone who's addicted to gambling, drinking. He's on the verge of tuberculosis, which obviously they don't have a cure for at this time. So going into that movie and seeing his character, you're kind of concerned about him throughout the movie, the way he looks. I feel like Kurt Russell pulling in as a main lead, trying to get everything under control, along with his brothers, Bill Paxton and Sam Elliott. It very much makes an interesting dynamic between all three of them and what their beliefs are for this town. And you go along with Kurt Russell's love interest. Even though he's already married in the movie, he comes across, I believe, a singer or someone who is a part of a play, and he starts to develop a different love interest for that woman over his previous marriage. So outside of the performances alone, which I cannot praise enough, this movie, it does such a good job of capturing what's going on during the time period, from the setting, the clothes, the way everyone looks. You're kind of blown away. And also the amount of horses. I really have to know how many horses were acquired for this movie. Because, dear Lord, it just kept going. And when you think you've stopped seeing enough horses, next thing you know, 30 more horses come out of left field, and you're just like, it keeps going. It nonstop. Another special shout out I want to give in the positives is Stephen Lang. I thought he was a really crazy cool character, where he wants to act like this bully, this strong guy, but in reality he is a wimp and a coward. And so watching him throughout this movie and seeing all the different kind of personalities he can bring out of Ike, his character, I really enjoyed his performance, especially him along with Michael Rooker, who I haven't seen him this young in the movie before. I've more so known him from The Walking Dead as well as Guardians of the Galaxy. So seeing him this far back, I was just kind of like, wow, this is, I was just in such a shock. And that is the biggest positive about this movie, was just all these performances, all these names put together. They created something incredible here. Now, if I was to get into my mixed feelings of this movie, it's kind of hard to have a main villain for this movie, because you think you know who the main villain is of this movie, and then it kind of turns around and ends up being someone else, which I'm not going to complain. I mean, the more Western shootouts that I can see going on in this movie, the happier I'm going to be. The more tricks and gunslinging that's going around, again, the less I'm going to complain. And that's what this movie delivers, is you think it's going to be a quiet Western, but there's shootouts happening left and right, and not just BS stunt doubles pulling in it. Like, you can actually tell the actors were putting their heart and soul into this movie, doing all these tricks and all these stunts for these people. Now, going on to the last segment I have for Tombstone, my negatives. And the biggest problem with this movie, in case you are unaware, this movie went through a lot of script rewrites. Like, from my understanding, I think there was at least 4. There could be more. I know Michael Bean talked about it in his podcast. But when you are watching this movie, it takes certain turns with the script rewrites and this way they jerk the scenes around to where it felt like we were paying attention to a certain plot of the movie, and then it would just jerk its head quickly to focus on something else, like something along with Kurt Russell's love interest, or just something that feels so more out of the blue and doesn't feel as well connected going on with their romance. And I struggled to have those kind of moments. And because I've heard that there were so many script rewrites, I mean, I wasn't actively seeking them, but when I was watching this movie and something would change, I could immediately tell. I'm like, oh, that was a rewrite. Oh, they cut that out. Oh, they changed this here. You could tell. And they did a lot of this during the movie while production was going on, from my understanding. And unfortunately, that is something you start to feel with this movie, is that things are cut and changed left and right, left and right, left and right, to where you're still following the story of Wyatt Earp, but it hurts it a little bit the way that they're jerking his character around more like they're controlling a puppet and shooting him left and right, left and right. Again, that is probably my only biggest complaint about this movie, is that you feel those edits and you feel those rewrites when you're watching the movie. Does it take away from the enjoyment? Absolutely not. I would still say I got the same amount of enjoyment out of this as I could get with any other Western. It's just when you have those scenes, you're able to point them out pretty obviously. Now, if you didn't know there were any rewrites, you probably could have watched this and maybe you might be a little surprised. But for me, going into this movie, I could feel it and I could sense it. So with all that being said, definitely check this one out if you have the time and if you have the chance. If you want to see a bunch of great actors in the 90s all get together, I highly, highly encourage this movie for you. Other than that, let me know down below in the comments what you think of Tombstone. If there's other movies like this that you enjoy, let me know down below. Like, share, and I'll see you guys in the next video.